Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today at the Children's Poetry Corner. My name is Lucy and I'm here in a corner of my house to talk to you a little bit about poetry. Today is the last day of April and April was National Poetry Month. And today is a special day in April. Today is Poem in Your Pocket Day. It's a day when you find a poem that you like, you carry it around in your pocket, and you read it and share it with people that you see that day. So, to get started talking a little bit about poetry, maybe first what we will do is talk about what a poem is. So, a poem is a kind of writing like a book or a story, but a poet arranges words a little bit differently. They choose words very carefully to convey the meaning and the sound and the rhyme. Sometimes poems rhyme, sometimes they don't. Sometimes poems are funny, sometimes poems are sad, sometimes poems are very long, sometimes poems are really short. Poems can be written across a page, like words you might see in a book, or they can be written in a circle or upside down. Just a really playful use of words is what makes up a poem. So I'm going to show you some different kind of poems today to help you find an idea of the type of poem that you might like to carry in your pocket and share with people on Poem in Your Pocket Day. The first type of poem that I want to talk about is a funny poem. There are a lot of poems for children and for adults that are written to be very funny, and the one that I'm going to share with you is by a poet named Jack Prelutsky, and he writes poetry for children. And this poem is about part of your face. It's about your nose. The name of the poem is Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face. Be glad your nose is on your face, not pasted on some other place. For if it were where it is not, you might dislike your nose a lot. Imagine if your precious nose were sandwiched in between your toes. That clearly would not be a treat, for you'd be forced to smell your feet. Your nose would be a source of dread were it attached atop your head. It soon would drive you to despair, forever tickled by your hair. Within your ear, your nose would be an absolute catastrophe. For when you were obliged to sneeze, your nose would rattle from the breeze. Your nose, instead, through thick and thin, remains between your eyes and chin, not pasted on some other place. Be glad your nose is on your face. Again, that one was called Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face by Jack Prelutsky. So the second type of poem I want to read for you is by a very famous children's poet named Shel Silverstein. He wrote a lot of books, storybooks, and many volumes of poetry for children. And this is a poem that shows you how you can use sound. I have a very old copy of A Light in the Attic, one of Shel Silverstein's volumes of poetry. This was mine when I was little. And this poem here is called 8 Balloons. Over here. And it shows you how you can use sound in a really interesting and playful way in poetry. 8 balloons. 8 balloons, no one was buying, all broke loose one afternoon. 8 balloons with strings a-flying, free to do what they wanted to. One flew up to touch the sun. Pop! One thought highways might be fun. Pop! One took a nap in a cactus pile. Pop! One stayed to play with a careless child. Pop! One tried to taste some bacon frying. Pop! One fell in love with a porcupine. Pop! One looked close in a crocodile's mouth. Pop! One sat around till his air ran out. Whoosh! 8 balloons, no one was buying. They broke loose and away they flew, free to float and free to fly and free to pop where they wanted to. That was 8 Balloons by Shel Silverstein. So another way that you might see poems is in a book where they're illustrated or where the words are arranged in a way that looks a little different or is very visual. I want to share some poems with you from this book called Out of This World, and this was written by one of my very good friends, Amy E. Sklansky. She writes poems for children. And every poem in this book, Out of This World, is about space. The pictures in this book were drawn by Stacy Schuett. So I will show you how poems can look different than what you might expect, or poems can look a certain way to reflect what they're about. This poem here is called Zero Gravity. Can you see that guy up on the ceiling? If you look at the poem, you see it says zero gravity. In zero gravity, you can sleep on the ceiling. Zero gravity must be an odd feeling. Some of the words in that poem are written upside down to reflect zero gravity. Another poem in this book that's very interesting to look at and looks like what it is about is this poem here called Black Hole. Swirling bits of matter pull toward each other with so much force, they finally disappear. So the words in this poem were arranged to be pulled into a black hole, and the words of the poem are telling you about being pulled into a black hole. One more poem in here. That displays words differently is called My Place. And it starts way up here in the universe. It says universe, galaxy, solar system, planet, continent, country, state, city, me. Sometimes poems can be about an object, but the poem will make the object sound like it has its own personality. This is called personification. I'm going to read you a poem called The Letter A. This poem's all about the letter A, and it is by Darren Sardelli. The letter A is awesome. It simply is the best. Without an A, you would not get an A+ on a test. You'd never see an acrobat or eat an apple pie. You couldn't be an astronaut or kiss your aunt goodbye. An antelope would not exist. An ape would be unknown. You'd never hear a person say, afraid or all alone. The A's in avocado would completely disappear, and certain words would be forgot, like ankle, arm, and ear. Without the A, you couldn't aim an arrow in the air. You wouldn't ask for apricots or almonds at a fair. Aruba and Australia would be missing from a map. You'd never use an ATM, an apron, or an app. The Arctic fox and aardvark would be absent from the zoo, and vowels as you know them would be E, I, O, and U. There wouldn't be an A chord on the instruments you play. Let's appreciate, admire, and applaud the letter A. That shows you what would happen if we didn't have the letter A in the world. That was by Darren Sardelli. Sometimes you can tell a poem by using props. to tell your poem. I'm going to read another poem by Shel Silverstein called Shadow Wash. And here, as a prop for this poem, I have a shadow. This is my shadow. I've never washed my shadow out in all the time I've had it. It was absolutely filthy, I supposed. And so today I peeled it off the wall where it was leaning and I stuck it in the wash tub with the clothes. I put in soap and bleach and stuff. I let it soak for hours. I wrung it out and hung it out to dry. Do you remember what my shadow looked like before? And whoever would have thunk that it would have gone and shrunk, for now it's so much littler than I. Shel Silverstein was a very funny poet. So poems can be written in many different lengths. They can be very short. They can be very long. I'm going to read you a very short poem. I will show you how short it is. It's just these 2 lines right here. 1, 2. And it's called Porcupines by Marilyn Singer. Hugging you takes some practice, so I'll start with a cactus. That's it. That's the whole poem about hugging porcupines. Should I read it one more time? It's so short. This would actually be a great one to carry in your pocket because it's very short. Porcupines by Marilyn Singer. Hugging you takes some practice, so I'll start out with a cactus. And poems can also be very long. Marianne Hoberman is a woman who writes poetry for children. She was the Children's Poet Laureate from 2008 to 2011. She's also the author of one of my favorite children's books called The 7 Silly Eaters. I love this book, and I've read it to my children very many times when they were younger. Actually, not so much anymore. But this whole book is a poem. It really is. And it's about a woman who has many, many children. 7, in fact. And they're all very picky eaters. I highly recommend it. But it's a very long poem. A whole book's worth of words makes one poem. So instead of reading you that poem by Marianne Hoberman, I will read you a different poem by Marianne Hoberman. This poem is called You and I. Only one I in the whole wide world, and millions of you. But every you is an I to itself, and I am a you to you too. But if I am a you, and you are an I, and the opposite also is true, it makes us both the same somehow, yet splits us each in 2. It's more and more mysterious the more I think it through. Every you, everywhere in the world is an I. Every I in the world is a you. And I have one more poem to share with you today. This is the poem that I am choosing to carry in my pocket today. I made a little pocket, but I could put it here in this pocket for Poem in Your Pocket Day, where you find a poem that you love and you carry it in your pocket and you share it with everyone that you see that day. So everyone in your house today, you can share the poem that you put in your pocket. And the last day, April 30th, every year, the last day of April, National Poetry Month, is always Poem in Your Pocket Day. So that's something that you can do every April if you want. So the poem that I chose to put in my pocket today is a poem that I have loved my whole life. In fact, it was the first poem that I memorized when I was little. And this poem is by Anonymous. which means nobody knows who wrote this poem. It was written in 1944, but nobody knows who the author of the poem is, or the poet, as we would say. So I will share with you. I could tell you without reading it because I memorized it a long time ago. I know it in my brain, but I also have it in my pocket. So I will share this poem with you before I say goodbye, and you go choose a poem to put in your pocket. This poem is called I Eat My Peas with Honey by Anonymous, which means we don't know who wrote it. I eat my peas with honey. I've done it all my life. It does taste kind of funny, but it keeps them on the knife. So that's the poem that I'm going to carry in my pocket today and share with everyone that I see. I hope you can find a poem that you like enough to carry around in your pocket. And thank you so much for sitting with me in my poetry corner and learning a little bit about poetry and hearing me read some of my favorite poems. Have a great day. Thanks.